welcome to Credit Versio's Q&A Wednesday live for September 7th. I'm your host, David Michalek. I'm a consumer credit expert with nearly 10 years experience. I've conducted well over 10,000 one-on-one credit consultations, over a million disputes, and tens of thousands of inaccurate and unfair accounts being deleted from credit reports. I am very much looking forward to our time together and sharing with you what I've learned over the last 10 years during our Q&As every Wednesday. We do that on Facebook and YouTube. So you've probably heard me say this before if you've been on the live, that our credit reports and scores play a huge role in so many areas of our lives. Think about this for a second. Our insurance companies, landlord, mortgage broker, banks, even our employers in many cases are looking at our credit report to see how we honor our obligations. Having great credit is critical because credit reports have evolved into something more than just a credit report. They become reputation reports. We've also referred to them as our adult report cards. And what a credit report does is it tells the story of what you and I do when we are entrusted with credit. And that's why we do these weekly live Q&A sessions. So I'm here to answer your questions about how credit works, the dispute process, and Credit Versio, of course. So I usually start off talking about maybe one or two subjects. And something that I like to dive in a little depth when when I do my Q&A lives, when I'm by myself, when John's not here. We also can talk a little bit more in depth about credit repair. It's just one of the things that we don't typically have an opportunity to do when John is on with me, which is perfectly fine. But I like to dive into more of how do we address negative credit? How do we go through the repair process? How do we do the disputes in a way that is ethical and that is effective? So what I'd like to talk about today, I'm going to start out talking about collections, and it's a subject that's come up a couple of times this week. Even though I was on a kind of a business vacation, it was a conference, I was out in Miami for a few days, I still kept on top of all the comments. I appreciate all the questions and comments that we get on our Facebook page, also on YouTube. So the question is, what do you do with collections? So the reason why I want to cover this is for the last 10 years, there's so much bad information that is out there about collections. In fact, all you have to do is go on YouTube and put in how to delete collections, how to handle collections. And one of the top subjects that comes up, and this is really a bone of contention for me because it's something that doesn't put anybody in a good position. And one of the things that I see people saying a lot, these so-called credit experts, is don't pay a collection, never pay your collection, avoid your creditors, avoid the collection companies. So, and I've talked about this on a couple of occasions. John and I have delved into this subject quite a bit as well. And I want to break it down a little bit more today. And by the way, I see we've got a good group watching today. Again, as I said earlier, if you've got questions, credit-related scores, the dispute process, Credit Versio, feel free to interrupt me. I always like to start off with a subject or two and go into detail, but I'm here for you. So whatever's on your mind, feel free to post it, and I'll certainly address your question. So one of the things that always gets me, as I said, is people saying to don't pay your collections. Now, it's true, you can avoid one aspect of the collection process that can be a little irritating, and that's the phone calls. And if they call you, you get them on the phone, you can ask them not to call you. But that doesn't stop the problem. The problem isn't going to go away. And listen, let me qualify this a little bit. So I don't have a dog in the hunt here. Okay, I've been doing this for 10 years. I came into credit repair as a client. I've literally had the conversation that I'm going to have with you thousands and thousands of times. If you're using Credit Versio, great. If you're not using Credit Versio, that's fine too. No matter what you do to improve your credit, I just want to give you some great pointers for how to handle your collection. So the first thing I want to do is I want to clear up some myths, because one of the things that I've learned that stands in the way of people doing anything about their collections is they've got a couple of beliefs that who knows where they got them from, probably so-called experts on YouTube, and this is where the root of a lot of these problems come from. And so let's get rid of a couple of myths. There's really my top three that we want to address, just so we can just have a very intelligent, responsible conversation about what to do with collections. So the first thing is Is it legal for a third party collection company to have your debt, to buy, say, your Verizon bill or your Synchrony bank card or your Visa or your American Express? And the answer to that is yeah, 100%. So there's two types of collections, or two type of collectors, I should say. You have collectors who are debt buyers, and you have collectors who are partnered with the original creditor and they are assigned the debt. But a debt is an asset. A collection is an asset. Just like if someone were to say, "Oh no, it's not legal for a collection company to own this debt," it's like saying, "Well, it's not legal for you to sell something that you own." So if I'm a collection company and I want to go to American Express, for example, and I say, "Hey, listen, let me buy your bad debt, and I'll buy it for 20 cents on the dollar." I'm not sure if this is exactly what they arrange. Who knows? That's their business. But if I want to buy that debt, American Express is perfectly in the right to say, okay, yeah, we've tried calling these people, we can't get a hold of them. We're not really in the business of trying to chase people down for money, at least to a certain degree we are. But at some point, we have to get rid of this debt. We're not going to chase anybody anymore. So they sell that debt. Now that debt, if I'm a debt buyer, I own that debt now. Okay, that belongs to me, and I can do whatever I want with it. Now, obviously, I'm going to want to try to collect it, and I can do a few things. I'm going to send you a notice first. I'm going to let you know that, hey, I own this debt. I am now your creditor, which means that not only do you possibly have a charge-off collection from American Express on your credit report, but now as a debt buyer, as your new creditor, I can also put this on your credit report. So that's a disconcerting fact about collections. So to clear up number one, yes, it's perfectly legal for a third-party collection company to either buy a debt, and now they are your creditor, or they can be assigned the debt. You see this happening a lot with medical collections. A lot of hospitals, a lot of doctors will assign their debt with the hope of getting a percentage of that. Okay, so let's take a pause real quick. We got Ram with a question. Hey, David, I have a problem with Smart Credit. The information about my account is not accurate on Smart Credit. Doesn't show the derogatory account, but they still exist on Credit Bureau. What do you recommend me to do about that? So, Ram, that's actually a very, very rare situation. Also, here's what typically happens. So there really isn't such a thing so much as like a Smart Credit report. A Smart Credit is just a conduit for data. It brings the information in from TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. So they don't have their own file on you. Smart Credit doesn't have their own data. They're just bringing it in from the bureaus. When I hear that comment, typically what happens most of the time is they just got a brand new Smart Credit account or Smart Credit report, and they're looking at a 2 or 3 week old credit report from another source. It could be Credit Karma, it could be something else. So the first thing I would tell you to do, Rand, is just check the dates on the credit report. Remember, credit reports are dynamic. Okay, they're queries. They change frequently. They can change daily depending on your data furnisher, who's reporting information, especially if you're in the dispute process where things could be changing maybe a little faster, more frequently than they would ordinarily. So just make sure that you're looking at the dates, because that's probably what you're seeing. If it's not, feel free to give me an email or a post on here, and we can go into it in a little more detail. So we just covered number one. Number two, another myth that people have or believe is that paying a collection is going to somehow reset that 7-year reporting deadline. That's not true at all. What happens here is people get confused between the 7-year timeline when accounts are going to drop off the credit report and the time bar date. So what's a time bar date? So this can be different from state to state. A time bar date is the time that a collector has to sue you. Now, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to make this a real negative conversation. I'm just letting you know what is possible and what a collection company can do. So the time bar date gives a creditor in that particular state a certain period of time to sue you for that debt. Some states is 2 years, some is 4, some is 7. So it's kind of all over the board. So you have to actually see what state you're in to determine what that what that is. So now, can you reset the time bar date? Yeah, you sure can. If you were to, let's just say, you're in California. I believe the time bar date for California is 4 years. Let's say a collection company calls you up and it's 3 years and 9 months, so you're almost out of the woods of them being able to sue you, making the assumption that they might. Not all collection companies are going to go that route. And they can get you to pay them a few bucks. Just say, hey, listen, David, we want to settle this collection with you. You know what? Can you just make a good faith payment? Pay $5, $10, something like that. Well, that will reset the time bar date because you renewed the debt. However, it's not going to cause that 7 year to reset so that it stays on your credit report 7 years from that date. So that DOFD, it's a date of first default. Now, you're not going to see this on credit reports. You and I won't see it. Some people misinterpret the date of first default as the date of last activity, and we count that 7 years from there. It's actually not the case. That date of first default, that's that 30 days that went to 60, then 90, then 120, and maybe 150, and then eventually went into a collection charge-off state. Well, that 7 years starts at that first 30 days. Now, that's hard-coded into the Metro 2. And it doesn't matter if it's with the original creditor or it goes over to the collection company. That date, that DOFD date, is hard-coded in there. So it will fall off at that 7-year period. I'll expand a little bit more on time bar in just a second here. So just to put you at ease, making a payment does not reset the 7 years. So there's nothing that's going to hurt you about settling that debt. Okay, third and final. This one I see a lot. Okay, let's take a quick break here. Let's see, Eric. Keep disputing the date last active, and they re-age on one report and keep updating. So they're not re-aging it, Eric. Just from what I said a second ago. Re-aging is actually a very rare thing that happens these days. Here's what I mean. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but in 2018, the industry switched from Metro 1 to Metro 2. So this is just a language that data furnishers and the credit bureaus use. And one of the cool things about that switch is there's a lot more data in the code. And part of that was a lot of clarity on that DOFD. Now, Eric, what you probably see is the date of last activity. A lot of people, just as I said a second ago, a lot of people see that date of last activity and they think that's where the date is starting, that 7 years is starting from there. That's actually not the case. Here's the only time you're really ever going to see re-aging. And by the way, Credit Versio is really, really good at catching this as an error, and it will automatically feed this to you as a dispute reason. For example, let's just say in January, you were disputing some collections. And then in February, then March, let's say 2 credit reports later, you notice that the open date changed. Let's say the open date change was moved up a couple of months. Well, that's re-aging because it made the collection look like it was newer. Now, that's the open date. Now, you typically don't see that open date move very often, but if it does, sometimes it happens with collections. So, Eric, if you're using Credit Versio and that legitimately does happen on a collection, then or any account by that matter, but we don't really see it very often on anything other than collections, and Credit Versio is going to catch that for you. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit more on collection. So what do we want to do? We got a collection. So I'm going to put on, there's 2 hats I wear. If I'm on with John, I don't really wear so much the credit repair hat because that's more of a credit education explanation live where we talk about how do scores work, how do bureaus work, and we're diving into the heart of credit. Now, when I'm on by myself, we're free to talk about credit repair. And so my number one piece of advice when you have a collection, now, by the way, this is a collection that is existing on your credit report. It's been there for a while. I'm not talking about you getting a letter from a creditor saying, hey, we just got to sign this debt, or we bought this debt. Here's the notice that we're obligated to give you. That would be different advice, and I'll cover that in a second. What I'm talking about now is if you're coming into the credit repair space, if you're looking to address some of these issues, the first thing that I would do with a collection is I would dispute it. And the reason why I would dispute it is this. Number one, well, there's two primary reasons. Number one, it's your legal right to demand that they prove that they've got a legal right to collect. The burden of proof is on them. It's on the data furnisher. So a data furnisher, AKA, is what we call anybody who, data furnisher, creditor, collection company. A data furnisher is anybody who provides information to the Bureau. So if you hear me say data furnisher, that's what I'm talking about. So we'll just leave it to collections right now. So if a collection company is on your credit report, if you have a collection on your credit report, the first thing I would do, even if it looks familiar, even if you have a pretty good idea what it is, I would dispute it and make them prove that number one, and most importantly, that they have a legal right to collect. Before I came to Credit Versio, I spent 7.5 years on the phone every day, sometimes weekends too, doing credit consultations in the credit repair process. I've done thousands of them. I say 10,000 in the beginning of this video, but it's probably closer to 15. It might even be 20. Just one after another, after another, after another. And one of the things that I heard a lot was, hey, I paid this collection off to XYZ collection company, and then now I'm getting a piece of mail from another collection company saying that I owe them. Now this happens a little less now that we've moved from Metro 1 to Metro 2. I don't know why exactly that is. Maybe there's been something that's happened behind the scenes with the CDIA. That's the Consumer Data Information Association. So I don't know. Maybe if they have some different protocol that has changed this, but we don't see it as much. But it's certainly possible. And the last thing you want to do is pay a collection that you don't owe to the wrong people. So I would dispute it and go to maybe even 3 rounds. Now, it's actually not uncommon for us to see things getting deleted, after that third round or on the third round and after, because the collection company is just jumping through a bunch of hoops. They're trying to see if they can wear you down. Don't get discouraged after that first response that you get from them saying, no, everything is correct, everything is accurate, and everything's going to stay. Follow up with a second round. Ask them to provide documentation. How do I know that you have a legal right to collect? How do I know that if I settle this with you, it's going to be marked as paid? Okay, now, if they verify it, if you've gone 2-3 rounds and it comes back and they provided the documentation, don't ignore it. Okay, don't ignore the debt. And by the way, I'm telling you this from personal experience. Like I said earlier, if you're jumping on, I see we got a bunch of new people that are jumping on. I came into this industry as a customer. I was one of those guys back, in the Great Recession. I owned a bunch of property. I had a ton of debt. Fortunately, I was able to unload a lot of my property before the whole market crashed in 2008 and 2009. But I had a ton of credit card debt. What I was doing is I was buying these properties and fixing them up and putting a lot of money into them and leaving that on credit cards. It's just thinking, yeah, once I flip this house or sell this house, I'll take the equity, what I've earned, and I'll pay off the cards. Well, when I eventually unloaded most of my property, there was virtually nothing in it. I got by just the skin of my teeth on some of this stuff, but I was left with a lot of credit card debt. So did I have credit card collection companies coming after me for that credit card debt? Oh my God. It was a very, very stressful time. I actually went to an urgent care one time because I had heart palpitations. And at the time, what was I, 38, 39? Man, that's not a good feeling when you're, middle age having heart palpitations, because you're worried that you're going to get a knock at the door. So, and it's not just a cautionary tale for me personally. It's just letting you know that this is a really, really uncomfortable situation. You don't want that sleepless night. You don't want that knock on the door where you might have that process server. If you don't know what a process server is, Good on you. I'm glad to hear that. This is not a knock at the door that you want to get, and I've gotten them before. So, um, so yeah, you don't want to you don't want to not you don't ignore this stuff. 12, 19. Aren't they supposed to remove? Yeah, I don't know what that means, Eric. Send me an email at davidm@creditversio.com. I'm not exactly sure what we're talking about here. I see the dates 6/1/22, 8/5. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. Okay. Or just, make a little bit more of a detailed of a post. I'd love to answer it for you. I mean, that's what I'm here for. I'm just not exactly sure what you're asking. Okay. So, one of the downsides of having a collection is, like I said, that process server. So if a debt isn't settled, if there's no arrangement being made, and here's my prediction, I think the collection business is going to get particularly aggressive here in the next couple of years. If you've been paying attention, even if you've been living under a rock for the last couple of months, I think we can all understand that, the economy is getting ready to make an adjustment. I know I talk about this a lot, but the reason why I talk about it a lot because it's so credit related. What's going to happen is a lot of people who are over leveraged are, like I was back in the day, are going to get wiped out in a very rough way. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just letting you know that this is probably what's going to happen. And I think collection companies are going to have to use some tactics that are a little bit more aggressive. I think we'll see collection companies exercising their ability to sue a lot more than they have. And we're even seeing that ramp up a little bit. I've got a good friend of mine here in town. In fact, we're going to happy hour together after I'm done with this. And he's an attorney that works for a collection company. And we have great conversations about this kind of stuff. And that's what he does all day long is he prepares lawsuits for collection companies. And, I think it's going to be a rough deal. So, but the point in that is you don't want anybody to serve you. You want to be able to settle any debt that you've got. Sometimes the best course of action, and I wish I would have done this. I really wish I could have done this, but I didn't. I was just, buried my head in the sand. If I ignore it, it's going to go away, even though the voice in the back of my head's like, David, this isn't going to go away unless you find some way to settle this. But getting on the phone with a collection company really has no downside to it. Okay, understand that collection company probably bought that debt for pennies on the dollar. Okay, let's say, let me create a scenario for you that's very close to home for me. Let's just say I had an American Express card, which I did. Let's say I owed $5,000 on it. I actually owed a lot more than that, but let's have a reasonable, non-scary number. So let's say I owed $5,000 on it. Well, if they bought it from American Express and I owe $5,000, they'll probably tack on some fees, but let's just work with $5,000. They might have bought that debt for maybe $1,500, maybe $2,500. So anything they're getting at that level or above is gravy for them. So I might call them and say, listen, hey, I got this debt. It's $5,000. I want to work with you guys. How flexible are you? I've got a little extra money. Will you take $3,000? Can I pay this off to you in some installments? So what that might do is a couple of things. One, for sure, it's going to forestall any legal action that collection company might be thinking about taking on you. Number two, you might avoid them reporting the information to the credit bureaus if you catch it early enough. Eric, got your post here. Yeah, you know what? You can call customer support 702-930-3903. You'll get a hold of Travis. He's awesome. Be able to answer that for you. In fact, if you called him after the live, he's sitting in his chair. I'm sure he'll be very, very easy to reach. Sotoria, welcome. Mobile, Alabama. Curtis from Seattle, Washington, welcome. Wanda, welcome. Good to have you here. Okay, so Eric, let me take a stab at this. The date last active is all over the place. Okay, that's fine. Years apart also, they just closed the account after almost 3 years and sold it to a debt buyer. There's inaccuracies all over the report for a repo, a Santander. Okay. All right. So don't worry so much about the date of last activity. Again, that was one of the things I was talking about earlier. That's not your open date. That's the date typically doesn't have a tremendous amount of significance to it. But yeah, Santander, I mean, dispute it. You can use the custom reason if you want. If you see inaccuracies, Versio may very well catch some of them. But keep in mind, Versio is absolutely brilliant at finding discrepancies on credit reports between accounts, between bureaus, but it doesn't know the backstory. So, Eric, if let's say you've got a payment plan with them and they didn't, they repo the car anyway. I've heard that one a couple of times. If that's the backstory and you had some kind of an agreement in place and you've got something in writing, then that's your dispute. Not necessarily what Versio serves you up. So just keep that in mind. Okay. And so going back to what I was saying a second ago, not a process that you really want to ignore. Okay. And just following up with what I said a second ago, if you catch this stuff early, remember in the beginning of this, one of the things that I said is, if you have a collection that's on your credit report, you've had it for a while, you more or less know that it's yours, maybe you're not too sure about the dollar amount, then I would encourage you to dispute it. Okay, worst case scenarios, they come back and they do what they're supposed to do, which is verify that the debt is accurate, that they do have a legal right. And then from there, settle it. Don't run from it. I know it's not the popular thing that is going on right now. You're not going to hear a lot of people on YouTube and the blogosphere talking about, hey, you got to settle your debts, but it's really the thing to do. It's the thing that's going to help you sleep a lot better. It's the thing that's going to help you move on with better credit a lot faster. Okay, and Dina, just looks like you're coming in maybe a little bit late. Medical collections, pay or dispute. Well, again, going back to what I said a second ago, my advice is always, again, it depends on the context too. Is there an opportunity where your insurance company is going to come through and pay some of this? Okay, the reason why they just changed the laws on how they're going to report medical collections is to give people more time. So we used to have 6 months before anything was going to report. Coming up soon here, we're going to have about a year. So anyway, that's really, really good news for us. Anything that that's under $500 isn't going to report, because one of the things that FICO and Vantage Score both agreed on is that medical debt was really not an indicator of high credit risk, because there's a lot of moving parts, especially when somebody gets sick and you're negotiating with a hospital, you're negotiating with your insurance company, and it's kind of a mess. So something plopping on somebody's credit report 6 months, 8 months down the road, I mean, I've seen this happen personally. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're not good with money or that you're a bad risk or that I'm a bad risk. It's just kind of it's an indication of how that part of our country is working right now. So, but to answer your question, Dina, if there's no more insurance company involved, if you've done everything you can do, and you just might dispute it. Give it a couple of rounds, verify that the information is reporting accurately. Now, if it is, settle it. So the great thing about medical debt, and I've seen this many, many times. Again, I've had literally thousands of conversations about this. Medical debt is one of those things that I don't know why they just tend to settle for a lot less than what that face value is. Probably because if you've ever gone in and you've got insurance. So I've lived a lot of my life where I've had health insurance and not had health insurance. I've been a cash pay. I'm surprised at sometimes how inexpensive things are. If you're like, hey, I'm a cash pay, how much does it cost? And then you find out what it costs insurance, and it's twice the price, 3 times the price. So if I were a betting man, I would think that's one of the reasons why you see medical debt being settled for a lot less than its face value. So give it a shot, and then do the best that you can. I know sometimes this is easier said than done, and I know that times can be a little bit tough. If you've got debt and you can settle it, you can put together a payment plan, that's the best route to go. It's just going to save you a lot of headache. Okay. Let's see. Eric, one more thing. I appreciate it. Can they still keep reporting charge off in the payment history? Also, on some of the reports, it shows being paid up to date, which is obviously not the case. Wanted to delete. So Eric, I'm going to make the assumption what you're referring to is in that 24-month history down at the bottom underneath the account. What a lot of people see is this: you got this ledger, and it goes back 24 months. These little boxes, and it'll say okay, it'll say 30 days late or 90, 120, and then you'll see CO, and that's your collection charge off indications, usually black. So every single month, and I got this question more times than I could count. When people call me up and say, "Hey, listen, they keep reporting it as a charge off every month." Well, they're not reporting it as a new charge off every month. All they're doing is in that ledger, which, by the way, that ledger is not read by FICO or Vantage Score. That's just for you and me. If you look at a credit report used by mortgage, sometimes you don't see stuff like that. But even the ones that you do, this is not something that's read by FICO. This is not that creditor updating month after month after month. Hey, this is a new charge off. This is a new charge off. All it's doing is just repeating what the current status is. So that the date that was added, whatever date that was, that doesn't change no matter what's going on in that 24-month mark. So I wouldn't be stressed about that. Okay, Dina says, thank you. This is great information to have. You're very welcome. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're enjoying the information. Okay, so again, my fifth point on collections is you might be able to settle for less than face value. Now, I put the might in there just to hedge my bet a little bit. Most of the time, you're going to settle collection debt for a lot less than what they're asking. You have a $5,000 debt. Maybe they add a couple, $1,500 on it, maybe a couple of grand. Who knows where these fees come from? It happens sometimes. But really, I mean, keep your mind on what that dollar amount originally was, and work down from there. I've been on the phone with clients who were getting ready to buy a home, and one of the first things that I told them, and I'll tell you this, the same thing: if you're getting ready to buy a home, the refi market's pretty much dead, but if you were going to refi or buy a new car, you definitely don't want to tell the collection company that that's why you're calling, because now they got you. So you don't want to rely on their sense of humanity. That's not what they're there for. I'm sure they're probably very decent people, but they've got a job to do, and that job is to collect as close to that dollar amount that's face value as they possibly can. So if you've got a $5,000 debt, you're not going to insult anybody. Try like $2,000, maybe less. It's completely up to you. But I've seen debts like that settled for in that neighborhood from time to time. Again, don't quote me on this. I'm not an advisor when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I'm just telling you that I've had this kind of conversation many, many, many times, and settling a debt for less than half of face value is not unheard of. Okay, so that is me unpacking everything about collections that I really wanted to tell you today, because I got so many questions about it in the last week and a half or so. I know I missed you guys last week. I was in Miami for that conference, and I imagine that's one of the reasons why we have a little bit larger of a group here today, and I appreciate you being here. So feel free to jump in with your questions. Looks like William's got a question here. Let me bring that up. Hey, David, just got started a couple of weeks ago and sent my first round off last week. Hoping to get a 6-year-old auto charge off removed since Credit Versio has found it reporting inaccurately with a balance due. One of the things you want to keep in mind, and William, I cross my fingers that that's something that gets deleted for you if it's negatively impacting you. Okay, I want to give you a different perspective. And I'm not saying this applies to you. Obviously, I'm not looking at your credit report, but this is something for everybody to keep in mind when you're going through the dispute process. When you have older derogatory accounts, like a account that's 6 years old, 6.5 years old. So William, the damage that has done to you probably wore off at 24 to 36 months. Now, there's some exceptions to that, but let me make an assumption that since that time, let's just say you went through a tough time, but for the last couple years, your credit's been pretty good. The impact of that repossession, technically a collection charge-off, is probably pretty light. Credit scores, the whole point of a credit report and a credit score is to predict the likelihood of you going into major default in the next 24 months. Specifically, the language is a major derogatory. Well, what's a major derogatory? 90 days late or worse. Okay, if there's minor derogatories, major derogatories. Minor is a 30-day and a 60-day late. A major is 90 and above. That's all the credit score is designed to predict. So what is the likelihood that that's going to happen? So the reason why I'm bringing this up is a lot of what's going on with your scores is predictive around a 24-month period. It's one of the reasons why you tend to recover from things pretty quickly within that 24-month period. Like you can see a dramatic improvement in your score over 24 months because you're healing from this stuff. So what I'm telling you, William, is yeah, maybe you'll get this deleted. Will it increase your credit score if you do? Maybe, but it could go the opposite way. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say you got a thin file, and this is the part that I want everybody to pay attention to. If you've got a thin file, what that means is not a lot of credit. If you've got a short credit history, meaning maybe only a handful of years, 6, 7 years, something like that. If your oldest account, if your oldest trade line, not collection, okay, trade line, okay, it could be a charge-off, collection, it could be a repossession, which is essentially the same thing, foreclosure, it could be a charge-off credit card. If that has a lot of history to it, meaning if you've had that, if that's your oldest account and your oldest account by maybe 6 months, a year, if that gets deleted, what happens is you're shortening the length of your credit history. You will reduce the average age of your file, and that can drop your score. It's not going to be catastrophic. The age of accounts is roughly 15% of your credit score. You got about 82 points sitting there. Now, that's just a rough guesstimate, but it's a pretty good chunk of points. Now, does that mean you're going to lose 82 points? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is be mindful of what you're disputing. In fact, one of the pieces of advice that I would give people when I was actively counseling them in the repair process, which like I said earlier, I've done for 7.5 years, thousands and thousands and thousands. When we looked at some of their older accounts, older real estate, because back when I got involved in the credit repair industry, there was a lot of foreclosures and short sales were everywhere. Everybody had it. Bankruptcies, everybody had it back in the day because everybody was recovering from the Great Recession. So we would do a serious evaluation of what we're going to dispute on their credit report. And this is something I want you to keep in mind when you're going through that dispute and the repair process. Look at some of these accounts. Look at the open date and how old it is. If it's an old account, if you've had it for 7, 8, 9 years, and it's among the older accounts on your credit report, and let's just say it was charged off 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you might just leave it. Okay, you've largely recovered from that. As long as you're keeping your nose clean, you're on the straight and narrow, you're paying your bills on time, you don't have high credit card debt, you're not really going to see a dramatic improvement in score. In fact, it might go a little bit the other way if you're getting some of these established accounts deleted. Just because it's got a derogatory status in the payment status field doesn't mean it isn't giving you some benefit, especially in the area of age. Okay. Eric says, thanks, David. I appreciate it. You are very welcome, Eric. Is there any way I can go to you to repair my credit? Eric, you don't need me for that. That's one of the beautiful things about Credit Versio. Here's one of the things about Credit Versio that I'll give you guys a little bit of insight. Really interesting times right now that myself, my partner David, who just stepped out of the office, we have actually met, and our other partner, Ari, who's our developer, we've actually sat down with some pretty big credit repair companies. And we are in the process of building their back-end software, their processing system. So just to give you a little insight of how credit repair companies work, this is how all the big ones work. Even the biggest ones work like this. They don't have sophisticated software that's scanning credit reports. It's a very complex thing to do. It took us years to build it here at Credit Versio, and that's all we focused on. And we are at our core a software company. But every credit repair company has a whole team typically overseas in the Philippines and also India and sometimes Pakistan, whole teams of people that just read credit reports all day. You're paying them $3 an hour. And to them, that's a phenomenal lifestyle, by the way. This isn't like slave labor or anything. And Credit Versio has changed everything because Credit Versio is much better at reading credit reports and doing data analysis. I mean, a credit report is just a data file, really, if we take it down to essentially what it is. So we have massive credit repair companies that are like, hey, listen, we can tell Credit Versio is better at this than our entire development team, our entire processing teams. Why don't we just license their software? So that's what we're doing now. And we have credit repair companies that do 2, 3, 4,000 clients a month. They're massive. And in fact, David just had a meeting with one of them today. We're integrating licensing Credit Versio's dispute software in the background. So the irony here is that there's going to be tens of thousands of people who are paying credit repair companies to do their credit repair. And what's really happening? Credit Versio is doing it in the background. So for everybody that's on watching this, that's doing their repair with Credit Versio, bear in mind in about 6 months, there's going to be thousands of people who are paying credit repair companies to be doing what you're doing by yourself right now. So Eric, that's just my way of telling you that Credit Versio is better. I've looked at so many credit reports. I've done this for so long, and I can honestly tell you that Credit Versio can find about 20 different mistakes across 3 bureaus. I can't find that many. I mean, it would take me an hour and a half looking at a credit report, and I'm probably going to miss stuff just because I don't read things like software reads things. So there's certain things that I think we all can agree that software does better than the human brain, and that's one of them. But I'm flattered, Eric. I'm very flattered that you asked. I appreciate that. William Jones, indeed, Credit Versio did show the account's negative impact is low when viewing my profile. Thanks for all that you do. You're very welcome. And I'm really glad you're taking this to heart because, and I'm gonna wrap up. Where are we on time here? Gosh, we're at 43 minutes already. We're just having fun today. By the way, everybody who's asked questions, great questions today. I really appreciate it. I love doing this. I love spending time with you. I love talking about this. And I want to wrap up with one last thing. And I'll stick around for a couple more minutes if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them for you. Oh, and real important, especially for Eric and William, you guys are on YouTube. Love it. I'm glad strangely, our YouTube channel is bigger than Facebook. Isn't that crazy? All of our advertising that we do is on Facebook, and we have our biggest following on YouTube. So if after this, if you have a question, unfortunately on YouTube, I don't see them anymore. As soon as the live ends, all the questions disappear. I can't respond to them. So if you have a question, you can email support@creditversio.com. It'll go to Travis. Travis is awesome. If you want to email me directly, it's David M. M is in Michalek @creditversio.com. Happy to answer your question. Or on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, if you post a question, that I can see after the live. It goes right into the stream. It's just a little bit better than YouTube for some reason. Either that or it's user error on my side on YouTube, and I don't know what I'm doing. And maybe I have to do a little bit more research on it. Okay, so I want to address this last question, and I want to define, does it work? I see so many comments. We have commercials and we have ads on all of our advertising is on Facebook, by the way. I think we have a little bit on Instagram. But one of the posts that I see is, does this work? Does this work? I mean, literally. We have ads that have 1,500 comments on it, and just every day, boom, 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 boom. The cool thing is, most of the time, I don't have to answer any of them because it's just people asking other people who've used Credit Versio what their experience was. So I want to define, does it work? So I have to answer, I have to qualify that. What does it mean, does it work? Well, when I answer that question, I'm going to say, well, does Credit Versio read credit reports accurately with a 99.9999% ability to identify what things are? Yes, it works. It works very well. Does it find errors and mistakes across all 3 bureaus and across multiple credit reports? Yes, it does. It works that way. It works very well. Will it pair a dispute reason that's the best, has the highest probability of a positive outcome when it finds an error? Yes, it works that way. Okay, so I can answer, yes, Credit Versio works. Now, when people ask that question, They're asking, well, is it going to get stuff deleted from my credit report? Okay, well, that's a different question entirely. Because Credit Versio finds errors and writes disputes and does everything that a high-end credit repair company is going to do for you, does it automatically. Does that mean the accounts are going to be deleted? No, it's not up to Credit Versio. It's not up to you. It's not up to the letters. It doesn't matter what you write in there. Things get deleted from credit reports or repaired from a credit report if it's either outdated, incomplete, unverifiable, or just erroneous. That's the other word. So, is it wrong? Okay. Is it outdated? Is it incomplete? Is it unverifiable? Well, can the creditor verify it? Can they fix it? Okay. Can they make it complete? If the answer is yes, then the account's going to stay, no matter what you write. There's no such thing as magic dispute letters. You know, one of the things I'll share with you. Oh, hey, Scott, good to see you. Welcome. How do I say it? Sortoria? I hope I'm saying that right. Forgive me if I'm not. Thank you so much for being here. So let me put it to you this way. When we've been sitting down with big credit repair companies talking about integrating, you know, one of the things that they don't ask? They don't ask ever, what do you put in the letters? Because they know there's no such thing as magical disputes. We're talking to people who've done tens of millions of disputes, okay, just like we have. We all know the same thing. Disputes are simple. They're short. There's nothing complex about them. You don't need to cite the law. You don't need to write this entire story. Okay, the reason why we know this is not just from experience, but we've got team members at Credit Versio who come from the bureaus. John is with me twice a month. We have Steve Rieger, who's been on with me. He used to run the entire dispute division for TransUnion on the West Coast. So we know a lot of what goes on in the credit bureau space. So just because you dispute something doesn't mean it's coming off. That's not what the law says. It just means that the information has to be as accurate as possible. You know, it doesn't even say in the Fair Credit Reporting Act that it's got to be 100% to the letter perfect. Okay, it just has to be. It just has to be accurate. Okay, there's some leeway there. So to answer the question, does it work? It works as good as anything can work. But still the creditor has the ability to update the account, correct it, or report it correctly. So I wanted to make sure I put that in context because I see that so often. I know what the difference between what they're asking and how I would define it. I have complete respect for that because when I was a credit repair client, I asked the same thing. What's the chances this is going to get deleted? You don't know. It's not really up to the letter or the credit repair company or Credit Versio. It's up to the data furnisher. Whether there's a mistake, can they fix the mistake? Is it verifiable? Can they verify it? So there's a lot of moving parts in that. But I will say this, and I want you to take comfort in this. When we look at our data, and when I reflect on the data from my company, which was a very high-end white glove credit repair company. I mean, we did really, really good work where I came from. The deletion percentage rate is the same. In fact, it's probably a little bit better with Credit Versio because you are sending the letters personally. The credit bureaus can ignore letters that come from credit repair companies. That's right there in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. We call it Exception G. It says that they can ignore letters that were prepared by somebody other than you. That's the power of Credit Versio. It's the power of doing it yourself. This is the way it was meant to be. All Credit Versio was doing is just saying, hey, here's a mistake, here's an error, here's the best dispute strategy to use if you would like it. If not, you have some other options. But that is absolutely as good as it's going to get. Now, the rest of it's going to be up to you. The rest of it is great credit habits. The rest of it is being a good credit risk and doing things that make FICO and Vantage Score like you. It's not complicated. So if you have a chance, when you have a chance, go into the YouTube channel or go into your Credit Versio account and go through the credit education. It's really short stuff. I put it in about 10 videos, just a few minutes. I think my longest video is 4.5 minutes, but it'll clear up so much of what everybody's confused about with credit. I didn't know anything about credit until I got into this. Then I became a certified FICO pro, then an instructor, and then I had great mentors. And I did all of that so that I can understand it for myself and now so that I can share this with you. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Great questions today. Wanda, you are very welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Scott, always great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And if you have questions, David M at creditversio.com. If you want me to answer it personally, if it's not like a high level question, or even if it is, send it to support at Credit Versio. Travis gets those. Travis is my main guy. I taught him well. He's going to answer that question right for you. So thank you again. I appreciate you being here, and I will be on next Wednesday. With me will be John Olsheimer, America's #1 credit expert, formerly with FICO and Equifax. That's it for me today. Again, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next.